Our next presenter, Mr. Gordon Stevenson. Mr. Stevenson has a background with the DNR, a group that I think takes as many slings and arrows to both sides as any I've ever met. Mr. Stevenson, I welcome you, and I'd like you to just give the group a little bit of your background that you shared with me.
Very good.
And again, welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. Before I get started, I've got notes, so you don't have to take any. Good morning. My name is Gordon Stevenson. I'm the principal of Stevenson Consulting. I am an environmental engineer. My background is I have a background in production agriculture. I have a degree in agricultural engineering from the University of Wisconsin. I also am an escapee from the Department of Natural Resources. I retired in January, now about three years ago. My last posting at DNR was that I was the Chief of Runoff Management. Over my career, I have been very deeply involved in this issue, and in fact, a lot of the policies that we're having trouble with today, I had a hand in formulating, so a lot of this might be my fault. So, in any event, for better or for worse, I have a good bit of expertise, both technically, on practices of manure management in this state, as well as the environmental implications, and I do also understand the agricultural and agricultural economic implications that we are talking about here. You folks have a very difficult task that you have been charged with. I've sat at such places and I know what it feels like. I have given out the committee a body of about 6 pages of notes. I'm not going to get through everything on there. The reason I have prepared that is because, as Ed let me know when we communicated about this, you needed facts to help inform your decision making, and that's what I'm trying to do for you today. Now, with that said, these 6 pages are not at all comprehensive. I've been at this about 30 years, and I could fill up several other 6-page note bodies of notes. So, for instance, I'm not talking about water quantity. I'm not talking about drawdown from high-capacity wells and any number of issues that you'll have interest in. So let's just begin. First point I wish to make is that there are citizens that have been severely injured by pathogens in manure. They're real people, they have names, they have been made sick. There are somewhere between 150 to 160 disease-causing organisms contained in manure slurry or whatever it is we might call it. And serious public health crises have already occurred from ingestion of contaminants that are in manure. The first one's not in Wisconsin, it's in Ontario, in Canada. The reason I'm including it here is the most serious one I know, and there are likely others like this. In the year 2000, manure ran down the well pipe of the municipal water supply well for the small city of Walkerton, Ontario. Most of the residents of that city got sick, about 2,300 of them, with very, very severe GI distress. Among that group who were sickened, sadly, 7 people died. So this is very, very serious business. Now I want to move ahead about 4 years and look at what happened in Kewaunee County. A private water supply well belonging to a rural farm family was contaminated from the activity of a CAFO spreading liquid manure on that karst, fractured bedrock topography that they have up there in that northeast corner of the state. All 5 of that young family members were stricken with very severe GI distress. One of those members of that family, the youngest, a 4-year-old, almost died. It was among those bacteria that you will read about in the manure irrigation work group website is E. coli. In 2006 in Brown County in the town of Morrison, all 50 to 100 water supply wells were contaminated by manure. Residents reported GI distress, ear infections, viruses, etc., at a much higher rate than would have normally been expected for that time of year and in that place. And that was a regional contamination, not just one family. And again, for Kewaunee County, that if there is a poster child for too much manure going on in too small of an area, it's Kewaunee County. Right now, 31% of the water supply wells in county-wide are either bacteriologically or nitrate contaminated or both. And in fact, in one township in Kewaunee County, 50% of the water supply wells are contaminated. You should note that Kewaunee County has the 2nd highest concentrations of CAFOs of anywhere in the state. I think we now have 17 or 18. Brown County now has over 20 CAFOs. And the risks, of course, associated with what's going on in Kewaunee County are, again, all those exposures to nitrates. You've already heard about blue baby syndrome. It is also associated with certain types of cancer as well as with diabetes. Now, those 3 events that I just told you about are the tip of the iceberg. We could go on a long time inventorying people who have been made ill from manure. I'll stop there, but the point is all those examples I gave you were waterborne. Now, what about manure and air quality? Significantly less is known about pathogens in airborne manure than in waterborne manure, and there's really not that much known yet. New research emerges every day in both media, but much less known about airborne. The important thing to remember is the very same contaminants are present in measurable concentrations in airborne manure that emanates from spray irrigation systems, whether it's a center pivot, a traveling gun, or any of the other methods. And citizens are at risk from spray irrigation activities, just as they have been from conventional land spreading activities, just as those people in Kewaunee County are at extreme risk every moment of their life now who live there. It is important to understand as we proceed in this discussion about aerial spraying of manure is that there are no, I mean zero, no meaningful air quality regulations on the books that apply to Wisconsin's agriculture. People find that rather shocking. But people might look at something contained in livestock siding or a couple of other places. But the fact of the matter is, I don't know, there is nothing on the books, nothing meaningful that regulates air quality related to livestock agriculture. This is new territory for the state, and their response to the controversy associated with aerial spraying of manure has been convening that manure irrigation work group. I understand, and in response to a question I heard with the previous speaker, the genesis of that work group started with DNR and DATCP. They had a false start. They didn't mind their P's and Q's as well as they should have in accordance with open meetings laws, and they had to reconvene. That reconvened group, I can tell you, the members of that group are very well qualified. They represent environmental advocacy interests, public health interest, government, and industry. I know at least 3/4 of the people that are on there, and I have confidence in them. Further, I anticipate that they will be providing a well-documented and objective report. Now, be mindful, I'm anticipating not one report, but 2 reports. I think they're probably they will not come together on all issues. It is increasingly common for work groups like this to have a majority and a minority report. So you're going to need to be sifting and winnowing through that as it comes in. With that said, with the confidence that I have in that group, what I do not have confidence in is the level of knowledge that we currently have about spray irrigation of manure. As far as scientific inquiry goes, this is very, very new territory. And in fact, that irrigation group had to commence and get funding for its own research projects just to get the beginnings of some baseline data. They will be generating a risk assessment shortly, and that's what I'm told is coming up next, as well as a body of recommendations. That has not happened yet, but that's what they are proposing to do. Their recommendations are going to be based on statistical analysis of the very limited data that they have. So just understand that this data is not based, their conclusions, I should say, will be based on a relatively small body of data. It will be statistically derived, and of course, as we've all heard the joke about the statistician who drowned in the river whose depth was 3 inches. So in any event, just understand what the parameters here of this group. They're smart people. I expect a well-documented report. State government has 2 gears, as I think we all know, slow and stop. On this particular matter, I'm going to talk about the slow gear first. The manure irrigation work group is now 1.5 years behind schedule. They were to already have that report out a long time ago, had the beginnings of the work group been handled as it should have been. However, they're off schedule. Now, what's going to happen in the future? I've been around the block on this. Having been in state government for as long as I was, I have been involved in somewhere between 6 to 8 very significant issues like this. And I can tell you they are very, very protracted. They go on for a long time. Before there may be any conclusion at all from state government, before there is final resolution with rulemaking or whatever it is they decide to do, from today, I would say you're looking at a 5 to 8 year timetable. Understand that the manure irrigation work group, that's not a regulatory document, it's just an informational document to be used by the various powers that be and the various interests in this particular topic. Understand that if the state were to take some kind of action, they would likely need to pass authorizing legislation. Of course, that's not a fast process. They would convene another work group to develop an administrative code. They would conduct multiple public hearings, develop responses, and of course the real sausage making of negotiating compromise. Now, that's if the state does something. Now here's what happens if they don't. This is the stop gear. And I could well be wrong about this. I don't think I am. I hope I am, but I could well be wrong. I think the livestock industry will likely object to the findings of the manure irrigation work group, at least in part. That's the history. That's what I can tell you based on statistics. What I think is going to happen is the report will be shelved. I don't know how many of you are aware, this is a deja vu all over again for me. Some years ago, there was another work group. It was called the Northeast Wisconsin Karst Task Force Report. and it was basically looking at manure management activities on the fractured bedrock that's right at the surface in northeast Wisconsin. And of course, we all know there's very high nitrates and bacteria problems, and of course, Kewaunee County is the epicenter of that. There was a group, equally qualified, that developed an equally well-documented report, and it's called the Northeast Wisconsin Karst Task Force Report, and its purpose was to provide information so something could be done to curtail the loss of groundwater quality, the transmission of pathogens, and all the other problems that were associated with trying to spread manure on top of broken limestone, basically.
What year was that, Gordon?
It was in the 90s. I want to say 97 or 98. I can tell you what happened to that report. It was shelved. And so I've been around the block here, I've had some experience with this, and I have some concern. I hope I'm wrong, and maybe by saying this, somebody will decide to prove me wrong. That'd be just fine. Also, understand something very important about, there's something larger here going on in the mind of the industry about aerial spraying of manure. This is, for them, this is not just about aerial spraying of manure. They see this as basically the dam breaking on regulation of agriculture for air quality concerns. They don't want to see it happen. Remember what I told you a few minutes ago, that there are no meaningful air quality regulations that apply to livestock agriculture. They like it that way, they want to keep it that way, and they do not want to see the issue of aerial spraying of manure become regulated. I can tell you, again, based on having lived in this rarefied scientific political world that I did of DNR, that the current legislature and the current governor are equally determined to prevent any future environmental regulations of agriculture. They don't like that stuff. What they like is the fact that Wisconsin is open for business. As the previous speaker told you, they are, they would not argue with me if they were sitting here today, because that's in fact where they're at. They want to assist people to build businesses and to make money. And they're not about to see that particular activity be somehow impeded by the imposition of what they would see as costly environmental regulations. Now, in the costly part, not very many farmers use spray irrigation of manure, at least on a statewide basis. And in fact, it's been going on for a long time. But one of the reasons you understand it's so popular is, as I can tell you as an engineer, it's just so much cheaper to pump liquids than it is to push, pull, drag, and lift solids. So for the long term, big investment up front for spray irrigation of manure, but there is a payback to it because it is so much cheaper than the alternatives for manure management. And not only is the current administration not likely to be allowing further environmental regulation of agriculture, they are promoting the growth of agriculture. They would not argue with that either. If you look at the programs that are getting the emphasis these days, I'm going to tell you about one of them. There's one called Dairy 30 by 20. That's a statewide grants program, and basically the goal of that program is to raise the milk production in Wisconsin. Milk production in Wisconsin is about 25 billion pounds per year. So this program wants to increase that to 30 billion pounds per year by the year 2020. The other thing you need to understand about what's going on with state government and its influence on DNR, DNR's Office of Enforcement is closed. It's still possible in a very limited way for enforcement to occur, but that has to go directly through the secretary, not through an enforcement staff. So there's no Office of Enforcement anymore at DNR. And finally, the DNR staff that are involved in the CAFO program are fully engaged in issuing permits. That's the marching orders. Get those permits out there so these businesses can develop, make jobs, etc. So the line goes. And they are very involved in seeing that that happens. The growth of CAFOs in Wisconsin has been meteoric. When I wrote the first CAFO permit in about 1985, and in that year, I think I ended up writing about 5. There were only 5 CAFOs in the state. None of them were dairy. I think 4 of them were poultry operations, and 1 was a beef farm. Well, we move ahead to 2015, and we have about 250 CAFOs. About 220 of them are dairy. And the correct number for the number of pending applications, I am told, I've been given a number by 2 different people at DNR. One number was 25, the other number was 50. So somewhere between there is how many CAFO applications are pending. There are more coming. I want to talk about manure myths. The last speaker did too, but I want to underscore a couple of those things. First of all, about biogas digesters. They are not panaceas. They're not designed to remove pathogens. They are designed to produce methane gas. They do not remove nitrogen or phosphorus. Those are the two chemical components of manure that are of deep pollution concern. And of course, nitrogen and phosphorus are major plant nutrients as well. And also, a DATCAP study, Department of Ag, Trade and Consumer Protection of Wisconsin, determined that they do not effectively remove odors. And also, you heard the other speaker about the other air constituents that aren't removed. Now, on this issue of removal of pathogens, biogas digesters indeed do remove a percentage of those pathogens. I just want to underscore that the percentage removal of pathogens by a biogas digester does not translate into an equal percentage of removal of an effective dose to make somebody sick. Even 1% or 10% or 20% or 50% of the current pathogen population in any given manure sample may be sufficient to make somebody sick if it's airborne. So there is really no correlation that can be made between the reduction in a biogas digester and what might really happen to people. Another myth is that the CAFO rules provide protection of the environment and public health. Fish kills have occurred from the land spreading activities of CAFOs. Groundwater contaminations have occurred from the activities of CAFOs. Water supply wells have been contaminated from the activity of CAFOs, and citizens have been made sick by CAFOs in the state. And I told you about some of them. Another myth, and I really appreciated your questions, sir, on the issue of who should do this and why. There is a myth that local units of government cannot regulate livestock operations. I don't think that's true. First of all, in our 243, that's the CAFO rules, as you know, and livestock siting, which are the rules that DATCAP says all your local ordinance have to be based on, are silent on the issue of aerial spraying of manure, just as those 2 bodies of rules are silent on other things like road weight limits that are certainly within the purview of local government, lighting, noise, all those other things. And those, just remember that currently those rules don't regulate aerial spraying at all. And at least 12 to 15 local units of government have passed or are currently considering regulating aerial spraying of manure. On the emerging legal issues, I know that there are concerns with lawsuits from the livestock industry. We heard one such farmer that plans to do so if it gets regulated like that. And I'm sure there are many more. And I know that the livestock producer organizations are rattling sabers like this all around this particular issue. I want you to understand the other side of that legal coin. Bear with me here. I'm going to tell you about two cases. One is in Wisconsin. Another is in Des Moines, Iowa. The Wisconsin case involved the Wisconsin Mutual Insurance Company versus a farmer named Falk. The Wisconsin Supreme Court found that a Wisconsin dairy farmer who allegedly caused groundwater contamination by spreading manure on his field was not covered by his farm liability insurance policy for the damage that activity incurred. That's based on the pollution exclusion clause, which, by the way, is in most farm liability policies. That states that coverage is excluded for damages that result from actual, alleged, or threatened discharge, dispersal, seepage, migration, release, or escape of pollutants into or upon land, water, or air. The Wisconsin Supreme Court, in this same decision, further found that manure is in fact a pollutant. And that's the key here, because lower court decisions had consistently found that manure is a fertilizer, not a pollutant. So this is a big deal. And this farmer is not covered. Now also, I want you to be aware that the Falks and their agronomists had developed an approved nutrient management plan to govern their use of manure through their county conservation office. So the insurance is not going to pick up the tab. There were some water supply wells contaminated here, and somebody's got to make those citizens who were damaged whole. I don't know if there were any illnesses involved, but somebody's going to have to pay. Now the second case I want to tell you about is Des Moines. Des Moines thinks they know who should pay. They think their neighboring county should pay. They in fact have announced that they intend to sue their neighboring counties for allowing agriculturally polluted runoff to contaminate its water supply. They're using various federal conservation laws, state drainage laws, etc., as they proceed with that. But they think that the counties are liable. So just be aware that there's an other side, there are other facets to this legal coin. For people with the outline, I'm going to skip number 5 and go to the last page. You may have seen numbers like these before, but I just want to make sure you're aware of them. A concentrated animal feeding operation, CAFO, the smallest unit is 1,000 animal units. In terms of organic pollution potential, and that's a measure of something called biochemical oxygen demand, one animal unit equals 18 of us, 18 people. Wisconsin Rapids, by the way, has a population of 18,000. So the smallest CAFO, the very smallest CAFO, has the same organic pollution potential as Wisconsin Rapids. And as the previous speaker told you, Wisconsin Rapids has a sewage treatment plant. CAFOs don't. Wisconsin's total, there are 6 million of us that live in Wisconsin, 6 million people. If you do the math on the total of all of Wisconsin's cattle population, that equals 60 million people, which, by the way, is equal to the combined human populations of the two most populous cities on earth, Tokyo and Mexico City. Now this Dairy 30 by 20 business I told you about, to get 5 billion more pounds of milk is going to take 200,000 more head of cattle. That equals the human population of greater Los Angeles, California. And last couple of points I want to make here is northeast Wisconsin is already crowded with CAFOs. So where are they going? They're coming to the Central Sands. They're coming Adams, Wood County, etc. Some factoids about Golden Sands Dairy. They're going to have 6,000 animal units, and if you work out the volume of that annual manure production, for those of you who've been to Lambeau Field, would fill it up to the 5th story bleachers all the way to the top 4 times per year. Human population of Wood County is 75,000. The human population of Green Bay, Wisconsin, I'm going to pick on Green Bay a little bit, is 104,000. Golden Sands Dairy's human equivalent population is 108,000. Now imagine this. Let's say you get a letter. Dear Wood County, we the people of Green Bay have decided we don't want to spend the money on our sewage treatment plant, and we think we can save a lot if we put it in trucks and ship it to Wood County and spread it in proximity to rural residents. I don't think anybody would stand for that. And of course, the good people of Green Bay aren't going to do any such a thing. Golden Sands Dairy apparently will. I want to just kind of end this with a personal story. I told you about that family in Kewaunee County whose 4-year-old was so sickened with E. coli she almost died. I met that family. That event occurred on my watch. These were real people. State government failed that family. County government failed that family. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources failed that family. And I failed that family. I still go through my mind, what could I have done to have prevented that? There were a lot of things I could have done, but I didn't do any of them. And you know, I've given you numbers and told you about how big this farm is or how many cows are worth what. But I guess for me, it comes down to that. That little girl's life was in the balance, and I had some culpability there, and I have to live with that. Well, the punchline here is I think you probably are realizing by now that this is falling to local units of government if anything's going to happen. State government is unlikely to take any meaningful action regarding spray irrigation of manure, despite the findings and quality of the manure irrigation work group report or any other factors. Even if the state did take such action, years will go by before anything of merit happens. In the meantime, you can expect the industry to continue to promote and adopt spray irrigation of manure because it is a cheap way to dispose of manure. The public will be exposed to even greater health risks than they already are if local units of government do not step up. No one will. Questions?
Gordon, I have a bunch of questions for you, but I'm going to ask my committee member, I'm going to give Ben the honor of going first. Anybody?
I'll try one.
Bill, please.
Speak up, I'm a little deaf.
Yeah. I'm flabbergasted by what I just heard. I knew what I was going to hear. This committee has been empowered by the foresight of the Wood County Board to look at this. I think we're 5, 6 of us are sitting here scratching our heads. What do we do now? So when the spring comes, do we go to Kewaunee County, Brown County to look at this? Where do we look for the help? I know Adams County has an ordinance in place already for that spray irrigation. But you've been away from it for 3, 4 years
Yeah.
now. Help us a little bit. What do we do next?
Well, I think, you know, it's kind of like going fishing, taking the binoculars and see what bait the other guy's using. Yes, go to those places where they're developing model ordinances. They'd be very, very happy to provide those to you. I can get copies of things if you'd like, and I'd be happy to you know, serve as a go-between for that activity. The other thing I would suggest, supposedly the manure irrigation work group report is going to be out in April. That's ambitious on their part. They're only about 2/3 done, so it's very ambitious. But you'll want to take a look at that. I do not think that report's going to say no problem, you know, go spray, irrigate, manure, wherever you want to. It's not going to say that, but that's going to help inform you on what you should do. One thing I would be very cautious about, and I used to work with county land conservation groups quite a bit, and county land conservation departments, on their budgets. If a county develops some kind of ordinance that requires a lot of expertise, a lot of site visits, a lot of vehicles to get out to farms, a lot of meetings, conferences, etc., it can get very, very pricey. Right now, if someone said, Gordon, tell me what we should do for an ordinance today, I would say, just say no. Do not create a workload like that. It would fulfill both the precautionary principle and fulfill the needs of the exchequer. This is complicated stuff, and it would take some smart people that you'd have to pay good money to be able to do it. So you know, there's some very practical approaches that are associated with this.
Mr. Hamlin,
I defer to the chair.
Ms. Rosar.
I guess my question or my comment would be, and I just like for your response to it. We could find a good way to remove the pathogens that would remove the health hazards that obviously make people sick. Is there any technology out there that's moving in that direction to help remove pathogens?
Yeah, it's under the current cost price structure of the milk industry, it would not be economical for dairy farmers to adopt it. What's available now, I think this opens up new ground. You know, as Mark Borchard probably told you, biogas digesters are designed to generate gas. Maybe it could redesign to remove a greater increment of pathogens. That could be usually destroys pathogens, not all, but it would not be economical with current technology.
Well, because our city municipalities have to do that with their
That's true.
sewer. You know, do you recommend that farms put up a very similar sewer system if they're producing large amounts of manure? You know, and as you said again, that's a costly thing.
You know, not necessarily. One of the big mistakes, at least in looking back, that has been made by agriculture was going to a liquid manure system, and certainly getting as big as they are. Back at a time when manure was solid, it was managed probably more, was given more value than it was today. If we could get back to a solid manure system. Another thing I haven't talked about here is agricultural carrying capacity. Just to maybe illustrate this, in Kewaunee County, they have exceeded their carrying capacity for cows very, very clearly. So if we would somehow balance what was going on the landscape with what the landscape could withstand. What happens is when you exceed a carrying capacity, something goes wrong. In Kewaunee County, the landscape bled. It bled nitrates, it bled bacteria to groundwater. So I am not necessarily, not that, municipal sewage treatment plan is the end all and be all of anything, but something different than we're currently doing. What we're doing right now is shoehorning these massive volumes of liquid manure from concentrated massive operations into basically a model that maybe was at its heyday in the 1880s. Liquid manure.
Any other follow-up, Don? Bob? Question?
Well, that's been my problem all the while, like you said, with the cost of the land conservation, supposed to absorb it, or who's actually, you're gonna need some experts that probably take time money a year in order to do this.
Depending upon what kind of ordinance you have.
Now, in the northern end of the county, we get a few traveling guns, but there's no liquid irrigation as far as otherwise.
Yeah,
The only area that would have one out here is the sand area, the rest of the area is all, as far as I know, it's all traveling gun here and there, but very few.
very few are doing it, that's right.
I mean, it should be people in the rest of the county that absorb this cost because of the fact that they're doing that very little anyway.
Well, again, though, it depends on what kind of ordinance you pass. If you pass one that, I know there's one, I saw one that was a conditional use permit, that they would actually allow aerial spraying of manure under certain circumstances. I don't know what technology or science they're basing on, but they're doing that. It was very complicated. It would take a lot of staff time. It would cause a lot of head scratching. And for my money, what's known about this right now, it would be best not to do it, just not to do it. And that's pretty easy as far as regulation goes. If you said it has to be, 12.5 feet in the air and it can have no more than so many cubic feet per minute of flow and all that business, that costs money. It costs lots of money.
Mr. Chairman. My turn. I want to talk about well protection. In municipalities have the right to establish a wellhead protection zone around a municipal well. It's the distance that we can keep people away 1,000 feet from that wellhead, I think under DNR.
Yes.
But in the ag area, they only have to stay 50 feet away from that wellhead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's crazy to begin with. And that's number one. Number two is, can a county write a wellhead protection ordinance every time they issue a permit for a private well? Can we protect private wells with a wellhead protection zone?
I wish I could answer that. I'm an engineer and not an attorney. I think your corporation counsel probably could help you with that. I think it would be a good idea. What I don't know is if you have authority to do so.
That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, I don't
If you had run into anything about that, so.
Yeah.
The other thing, I was impressed that there are no, it seemed like there was a qualifier. You said there are no meaningful air quality regs for agricultural
Right.
applications. To your knowledge, are there any meaningful air quality regs that apply to anything that is not ag, and could they be adopted?
Oh, absolutely.
Where would I find them?
Well, let's say you're a foundry and you have a discharge going up a stack. They have an air permit.
Yeah.
They have to meet certain they cannot go above certain concentrations of certain pollutants that would be in their discharge. What applies to municipalities and industries for environmental protection is voluminous. Let me give you an example. If you've got pulp and paper mills up here. Some of those pulp and paper mills have discharges to rivers.
Right.
Some of those discharges are measured, the pollutants have to be measured down to what's a nanogram. Now that's basically the drop of vermouth in the Atlantic Ocean of gin. That's how low the concentration is of that particular parameter. Now what parameters are used in the few environmental regulations that apply to agriculture? Tons. That's the smallest. How many tons of manure? or tens of thousands of gallons. So the way industry and municipalities are regulated are about 2 centuries ahead of agriculture. Don't believe what you hear from the bar stool. I said there are no meaningful air quality regulations. Any environmental regulations that apply to agriculture are extremely spotty. The rules that do apply are not based on water quality. The centerpiece of a CAFO permit is its nutrient management plan that's based on the 590 standard of the Natural Resources Conservation Service. It is not a water quality standard. It is agronomic. It assures that a farmer can optimize the crops that he gets off any given field up to what that soil is capable of doing. It does not look at regional water quality conditions to say, oh, it's completely silent on pathogens. There's nothing at all about pathogens in the permits or in 590. So there's a huge, huge environmental disconnect. You remember Earth Day. Agriculture got left behind.
Okay, two quick points. Number one is, it's not just the CAFOs we have to worry. One thing we've learned as a committee, it's not just the CAFOs we have to worry about, it's the near CAFOs that we also have to worry about.
The which CAFOs?
Near CAFOs.
Right.
They're under the 1,000 animal units.
Yes.
They don't have to file, they are not subject to the same regulations. Would it be helpful if they were brought under those same regulations as the CAFOs? If we lowered that to something like 250 or 300 animal units?
It would be an improvement. I would rather see the rules improve first before we do that. It would be an improvement. And in fact, if you do consider an ordinance, I would not limit it to CAFOs. I think it should apply to everybody.
Thank you. One last point I want to make, and this is not as much of a question as it is an observation. And that observation is every time we talk about the authority of the county to regulate, and every time we ask a legal opinion, we ended up with a two-handed lawyer. And that two-handed lawyer is, well, on one hand, it doesn't say anything, but on the other hand, it implies that you can't do it. So, we're left here saying, well, do we want to take the risk of getting the county in a lawsuit and tying up poor Peter Castenholz's time for the rest of his
You may be
natural life?
surprised where the lawsuit might come from, though.
It might come from the industry.
Yeah.
That's
Or
what
it-
I'm thinking.
It may not come from agriculture, it might come from the other side of the table.
Yeah.
Or both.
Well, that's our dilemma. That's our dilemma as a committee is, do we want to recommend something that will expose the county to additional, really non-productive charges, expenditures? And that's why I have some difficulty there. Bob, before we go, I think Bill is on. Bill, go ahead.
Last time I asked you a question, I asked, should we go to various places? I'm gonna throw some familiar names out. This committee has heard from Becky Larson, Joe Payton, Terry Kafka, Doug Casina, Mark Borkhardt, Kevin Masaryk, you may not know from UW Stevens Point. Should we be listening to somebody else? Is there a name that I've not included that should be included?
Let me think about that. Nothing's coming to mind. It's a very good question.
Bob, you're up.
Well, you mentioned these permits, these other farms are getting from the DNR, can we challenge them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you have full protection under the law. There is a means to challenge the permits. And by the way, you were talking about, well, the DNR might sue us if we do this. The DNR typically does not sue, would not sue in this case. It would be a farmer that would likely sue you. The DNR would probably join the case as an interested party, but it would likely be a lawsuit from a farmer. What I've seen on these environmental cases, those farmers usually are well-funded. There's money in the back from ag producer organizations that are helping them with legal matters and paying for it, which is very pricey, as you know.
Donna, go ahead, one more.
Can you put the genie back in the bottle?
I mean, Kewaunee County, you've already made the statement, you know, they were the poster child for too much manure and too small of an area. Once that becomes an issue, do you put farmers out of business? Do you, I mean, what happens when you already have human equivalents that are greater than the land space that you have?
You know, it comes down to some very hard things. Parents go to bed at night in Kewaunee County worrying if their children are going to be sick. Very, very sick. And for me, that just trumps everything, like that story I told you. Wisconsin right now, the global markets for dairy products are just through the roof. There's big demand from Canada, Western Europe, and even Mexico for Wisconsin dairy products. Now, dairy producers are saying, we're going to feed the world. You know, that's the altruistic thing. Well, I don't know if they're going to feed the world or not with a excessive value protein like that. What they are going to do is get very wealthy doing it. I think this goes back to somehow we've got to get this concept of carrying capacity. You cannot put so many cows on a landscape that the wells get contaminated. You can't put so many cows on a landscape that children get sick. You can't put so many cows on a landscape that no one wants to live in a rural area. And that's going to come with some collateral damage to somebody. Right now, from CAFOs, all collateral damage are going on citizens, primarily rural citizens, and some right here in Wood County.
You know, I haven't lived in Wisconsin all my life. We didn't move here until the 80s. And I remember when we moved here, somebody shared a fact with me that there used to be more cows in Marathon County than people. And, you know, I was thinking about that in light of all of this. And I grew up on a beef farm in Virginia, and we had a lot of manure. And, I mean, you know, we played with cow pals, you know, but it's a whole different world now.
Yeah.
You know, when I learned to swim, I swam in one part of the pond and the cows were pooping and peeing in the shallow part of the pond. You know, it was just a whole different life with the pathogens and the antibiotics and the chemicals and all of that. And we need to get up to speed with the scientific proof of what that change is doing to our
Yes.
culture.
Okay. Gordon, I thank you very much.
Sure.
And you're welcome to sit and enjoy. We're gonna wrap this up pretty quickly, I think. Oh, you have to be excused, right? Are you?
No, I have to be in Marshville at 2:30. I think I'll make
Okay,
it.
you make it. Okay, good. Okay, let's see where we're at. What I'm going to do now is briefly, probably for the next 15 minutes, open the floor up to citizen comments. And I'd like it as comments and not arguments. I'd like to have comments on this, but I'd like you to try and keep your comments to 3 minutes if you could, so that everybody gets a chance. I saw one hand go up where, sir, and by the way, please state your name for the record.
My name is Charles Hillman. I'm here with my wife Sandra. I'd just like to let Mr. Stevenson know that I'm one of these people that you talk about, you know, the real people. My well is already contaminated. I've got too many nitrates in there. I had to go out and spend $1,500 on my own to go up with a reverse osmosis system so that we can drink that water. It's already happened to us. It's going to happen to everybody else in the area if we don't take care of it.
What's your name again? and where-
Charles Hillman. I live
Charles?
about 12 miles south of Rome.
12 miles south of Rome. Okay. Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Your name, please?
My name's Rhonda Carell. Scott asked me to apologize. He had to leave. He wanted to speak, and he asked me to share his story. And I'll stay on topic here. I'll be very brief. Scott and his family were displaced from their home. They had to be bought out over in Juneau County, town of Armenia. The spray irrigation of manure was quite a bit of the problem, but there were many other factors. Just the smell of the lagoon being in such close proximity, they literally had their home spray irrigated. And he will come to another meeting and speak. I won't say too much more about that. But they have neighbors that have been bought out. We talk about nitrates, we talk about phosphorus and that sort of thing. And there is a family over there that is too scared to even stand up. We had to submit their water testing without their name on it because of the fears that they have. They have not been bought out. But they are dealing with nitrate levels of almost 42, and there's no reverse osmosis that will take care of that. They are drinking bottled water, and this issue is, it's really a problem. I'm going to be giving these to the committee. And in here, I want you to look very closely. I've given you the proof of our water quality in the town of Saratoga. We don't want to be turning up water quality levels like they have over there. It's too much manure. There's not enough ground to spread it or spray it on safely. And whether it's sand or clay, the water is still, it can still be contaminated. The air is still contaminated. And I just ask that you do whatever you can to help protect all of Wood County.
Thank you. Anyone else? This lady over here, your name, please?
Sue Savage.
Sue Savage?
Yes, and I have always lived in Wood County. I was born and raised in Vesper, moved to the town of Seneca, and I now live in Saratoga. The reason we moved to the town of Saratoga was for the quality of beautiful water. We have the best water there. It's unbelievable. And now this Kappa would put well number 1 about 100 feet from my well. We built way to the back of our 9 acres so that we can have privacy. And so now this field would be right behind our house. Please, my health and the health of my grandchildren who come and visit us, we have 5 grandchildren that come from different areas to visit us. We have a trampoline and a swing set outside. We play outside. We have trees. It's a wonderful area. And to have this over my head where spray irrigation may come all over these recreational activities we do outside. I hang my laundry out the back door, right by my well. That would be covered by manure. I mean, my health and my way of life is worth something. We cannot just consider it's going to cost money, it's going to cost money, it's going to cost money. I heard that when the judge said that Wysocki could have his building permits, that he has some money into this that he may lose. What do I have in my house and my 35 years that I've lived in Saratoga that I am not going to lose? Because if this goes through, I will leave the state of Wisconsin. And I can tell you that the medical bills for this area will skyrocket once you get this kind of thing in. This is medically insane, and the toxins that spread by this, I'm in the medical field. I understand the toxicity and the pollution, and it's just ridiculous. It is ridiculous. So please, please, please do something, and don't just say, we're waiting for science, we're waiting for science, we're waiting for more proof, we're waiting for more proof. Kiwani is proof. There's proof all over. It's time to act, not just sit on it and wait for more, because you won't get it from the state government. It's not coming. Thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
John Andresi, I'm from the town of Rome, just south of Default. Water is a finite element, and we've become increasingly aware of that in recent years. Water's been poisoned. Now the Nestle company's CEO is telling our legislators that water is not something that should be owned by the public. I disagree, but I digress. What I mean to tell you folks is that I wish that as representatives of our local area here, both Rome and other communities outside of your county, that you should charge yourself with recognition of the fact that our earth is growing in such leaps and bounds that we're outgrowing so many things, alluding to swimming in a pool where the cows used to pee is not the only thing that's happened, and it's going to continue to happen. And please, sirs and madam, continue to think of our continued existence. Think of the Native Americans' philosophy where they think 7 generations in ahead. They make their decisions that way. Think about what's going on ahead of you, ahead of the generations that you're bringing up. Thank you.
Anybody else? Sir?
Don Swanson, town of Saratoga. I pray to God that there are some protections put in place before the farmers have millions of dollars invested in an operation before something is done. I think it's going to be too late to help us at that time.
There was a gentleman in the orange, sir.
It's Jack Kurtz, town of Saratoga. You know, they say all politics is local, which is very true, but all social change is also local. Social change starts from the bottom and moves up. We're seeing that all over the world today. It doesn't start up in Washington or in Geneva. It starts in Wisconsin Rapids, it starts in Armenia, it starts in small places. Social change comes from the ground up, the grassroots. And the buck has to stop here, or I should say, the buck shouldn't stop here, the buck should start here. This is where we should start. This is where we should say, no, we're not going to do this. We're going to make a change, and we're going to stand and make a change together. And that's the only way this is going to get done. It has to start here. Thank you.
I see a hand in the back. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Eleanor Tyrell from the town of Rome, and it seems, I don't want to extend the answer to this because we need an answer pretty quick, but it seems sort of unfair that just Wood County Board is going to stick their neck out and it's going to benefit everybody in this community. But on the other hand, is there some way you can get other community boards to talk about rules that you all could put in place? Because it isn't just going to affect Wood County and it's not going to affect the town of Rome. I mean, what we're hearing is the state of Wisconsin is going to be screwed.
Let me address that. I think one of the things that we kicked around when we started off is that we understood that this was not just a Wood County problem, but that other counties and other communities are experiencing this problem too. We have a mechanism. I think county government is more fortunate than even municipal governments in the sense that we have the Wisconsin Counties Association, which we can bring things to and we can use to get other counties to join us in efforts to petition the legislature, petition the DNR. We can bring the force of a lot of counties around to it. I have no doubt that at least one resolution, if not more, may emanate from this committee petitioning the state to clean up some of the regulations or add additional regulations to NR 151 and 252, 243, sorry, 243, I'm sorry. I'm sure that there'll be recommendations like that because we will recognize that there are things that we simply can't do as a county, which are prohibited to us by, I guess the legal term is nullification by implication. That is, once the state acts upon it, the counties are forever forbidden to touch it. That's a legal principle that I'm not real fond of, but it happens. It happens to be the truth. And I think I'm going to end the conversation by saying one thing. You're looking at 5 human beings up here. You're looking at people who are just like you. We're not miracle workers, and I haven't seen any of us walk across water recently. And we're going to do the best we can. We live here. We represent you. We're going to do the best we can, and we're going to do the best we can for everybody. We're going to try and walk that razor's edge between letting business and industry prosper and saving and protecting our children and our precious, precious natural resources. I don't know what we'll do. I don't know what we'll come up with as a final answer. I can promise you one thing, that because we're dealing with permits that have already been issued in some cases, we may not be able to stop what's happening in Saratoga. And I think we knew that going in. But we will do whatever we can, and we will try and find answers for it so at least it won't happen again. And with that, I want to thank all of you for coming today. I really appreciate this.
Please, if you did not sign this paper, don't leave without doing so.